comment from someone who I'm proud to call a mutual. Her name's Lucy. If you're not following Lucy, you should be. She's an older black woman. There's a lot of wisdom on her page. It reminded me of a couple of things. This was maybe a year ago. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine about, I think I even made a TikTok about it. And we were talking about, like when was the last time that everything was just easy in the United States? And immediately I was like, I think that was the 80s and the 90s. And then I caught myself and I was like, well, I should qualify that easy for people who look like me. And one of the things that I've learned in the 4 years, almost 4 years, 3.5 years that I've been on this app is that, and I've learned this by following people like Lucy, and White Woman Whisperer, and Portia, and some other folks. There are a lot of smart black women on this app. You should be following a lot of them. Is that it's important for people like me to acknowledge the privilege that I have in this country, the privileges that I have in this country. And so I started thinking about that, and I started doing that because it's something that, up until, certainly through my whole life, through my 20s, it was just something I wasn't aware of. I grew up in Ohio in the 70s and the 80s, and went to college and law school in the 90s. And Ohio was still really, really segregated when I was a kid, until I got to college. And but it's like, through nothing that I did, through nothing that I earned, I have white privilege, I have male privilege, straight privilege. I'm very educated. I have some economic privilege. And, I kind of started just distilling it down that I have basically every privilege that this country has to offer except for generational wealth. And I think it's important for people who look like me to acknowledge that. And again, I didn't earn any of that. It's just how I was born. But she left this comment on a video where I was talking about my neighbors who were young. And, I was just thinking about them and the kind of future that they're facing right now in this country. People in their early, mid-20s. And it kind of dovetails in another reason why I'm responding to Lucy's comment. I was listening to a podcast this morning while I was driving into the city to go to work. And it's a podcast called Strict Scrutiny. And it's some women who discuss basically, and they're all lawyers and professors, and they discuss the Supreme Court. That's what their podcast is about. So it's pretty nerdy. But they had a guest on, this guy named Elie Mystal, Mystal. He is just kind of this bombastic black guy who's a constitutional attorney, smart as hell. They were talking about his new book that's coming out. And he was talking about the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act. And one thing that I've talked about a bunch on my app, or on my page, is Susan B. Anthony. In the fight for women's voting rights. And I point out to people very often You know, because a lot of people hold her up to be a hero. She fought for the right for women to vote. And I'm like, she fought for the right for white women to vote. She and her movement had no use for black women or getting the right to vote for black women. And Elie Mystal made the point this morning that, you know, given the 400-year history of black people in the United States, starting with 250 years of slavery, 100 years of Jim Crow, until we get to 1964 and 1965, the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act. 1964 was the first time in our nation's history that black women had a guaranteed right to vote. That is within Lucy's lifetime. It's almost within mine. I was born in 1968. But I think her point is extremely valid. You know, and I mean, I know I can get very myopic sometimes. But if you're not following Lucy, you really should be. She's a great person, and like I said, man, there's a lot of wisdom on her page.